The fallout was faster than even I imagined. By sunrise, the whispers from my dinner spread everywhere in town. People talked about my parents and my brother wherever they went. At restaurants, stores, and business meetings, everyone seemed to know the truth. For many years, my family had told stories that made me look like a bad person. They said I was selfish. They said I abandoned them. They said I was the reason for all their problems. But now people know the real story. The documents I showed at the dinner proved what had happened. They showed how my parents had taken money that belonged to me and used it to help my brother's failing business. They showed how they blamed me for mistakes I never made. For the first time in years, people heard my side. My phone rang all morning. Some people called to apologize. Others told me they were proud of me for standing up for myself. A few old friends admitted that they should have checked the facts before believing the lies. Meanwhile, things were getting worse for my family. The people who once respected them no longer trusted them. Business partners walked away. Friends stopped answering their calls. The same people who had once treated them like important people now avoided them completely. A week later, my parents came back to my gate. This time they looked very different. Their expensive clothes were gone. Their proud smiles were gone. Even the way they stood had changed. They looked tired and worried. I watched them through the security camera for a few minutes before walking outside. My mother stepped forward. "Evelyn," she said softly, "please talk to us." I stood quietly and waited. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then my father looked down at the ground. I had never seen him do that before. He was always the kind of man who looked people straight in the eye. But now he seemed ashamed. "We made mistakes," he said. His voice sounded weak. "We should have treated you better." Hearing those words felt strange. For years, I had dreamed about hearing them say they were sorry. I imagined it many times. I thought it would make all the pain disappear. But it didn't. The hurt was still there. 9 years of sadness cannot be erased by a few words. My mother started crying. Real tears rolled down her cheeks. Not the fake tears she used when she wanted something. These tears looked real. "We were wrong," she whispered. "We should have protected you." I remembered being 19 years old. I remembered standing in the driveway with a swollen cheek. I remembered my brother yelling at me. I remembered his wife calling me terrible names. Most of all, I remembered my parents standing there and doing nothing. That memory still hurts. My brother stood behind them with his arms crossed. He looked angry. His face was red. Even now, he refused to admit he had done anything wrong. Finally, he spoke. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You're acting like some kind of hero." My parents looked uncomfortable. But he continued. "If you had helped us earlier, none of this would have happened." I stared at him. Even after everything, he still blamed other people. He still could not take responsibility for his own actions. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because deep down I knew something important. People can only change when they admit they were wrong. And my brother was not ready to do that. I opened the gate just enough to step outside. I did not invite them in. I did not hug them. I simply stood there. "You still don't understand," I said calmly. "This was never about money." My brother laughed. "Then what is it about?" I looked at all three of them. "It's about trust." The smile disappeared from his face. "When I needed my family, you abandoned me." Nobody answered. "When I was hurt, you ignored me." Still silent. "When I begged for love, you chose someone else." My mother began crying harder. My father closed his eyes. The truth was painful. But sometimes people need to hear painful truths. The ocean waves crashed softly behind me. The evening wind moved through the trees. Everything felt quiet. "You didn't lose me when I locked this gate," I said. "You lost me 9 years ago." My father nodded slowly. "I know," he whispered. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then I reached into my pocket and handed him a small envelope. He looked confused. "What is this?" he asked. "Open it." Inside was information about a small apartment. Nothing fancy. Nothing luxurious. Just a clean place to live. There was also information about a job opportunity. A real chance to start over. My mother stared at me in surprise. "You're helping us?" she asked. "A little," I replied. My brother looked shocked. He had expected me to slam the gate in their faces forever. But I had learned something during those 9 years. Holding on to anger forever only hurts the person carrying it. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. That didn't mean I trusted them. It didn't mean everything was forgiven. It simply meant I was done letting the past control my life. My father's eyes filled with tears. He thanked me again and again. My mother did the same. But my brother remained silent. He couldn't even say thank you. Eventually they turned around and walked away. I watched them disappear down the road. 9 years ago, I had been the one walking away. Back then, I had nowhere to go. No money. No support. No one to help me. I remember sleeping in a tiny apartment. I remember working long hours. I remember crying at night because I felt completely alone. There were days when I wanted to quit. Days when I thought maybe my family was right about me. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe I will never succeed. But every time I felt like giving up, I kept going. One step at a time. One day at a time. Slowly my life improved. I found good people who believed in me. I learned new skills. I worked harder than ever before. Years passed. Small successes became bigger successes. And eventually I built the life I had once only dreamed about. Not because someone gave it to me. Because I earned it. That evening I sat on my balcony and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink. The ocean sparkled like gold. For the first time in many years, my heart felt lighter. The next few months brought many changes. My parents moved into a small apartment. My father started working again. The job wasn't glamorous, but he was grateful for it. My mother volunteered at a local community center. She spent her time helping people who were struggling. Little by little, they began rebuilding their lives. My brother had a harder journey. People no longer trusted him. Many doors were closed to him. At first he blamed everyone else. But eventually something changed. One afternoon, nearly a year later, he came to visit me alone. When I saw him standing at the gate, I felt nervous. Part of me expected another argument. Instead, he stood quietly. When I walked outside, he looked at the ground. Then he said something I never thought I would hear. "I'm sorry." Just 2 words. But they seemed very difficult for him to say. I waited. "I treated you badly," he continued. "I blamed you for my mistakes." His voice shook. "And I hurt you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The years of pain were still there. The memories were still there. But something else was there too. Honesty. For the first time, he was telling the truth. I didn't suddenly forget everything that happened. Forgiveness doesn't work that way. Trust doesn't magically return. But his apology mattered. It was the beginning. Maybe not the beginning of a perfect relationship, but the beginning of something better. As he walked away, I stood by the gate and thought about the girl I used to be. The scared 19-year-old girl who thought her life was over. I wished I could go back and talk to her. I would tell her not to give up. I would tell her that being rejected does not mean she has no value. I would tell her that other people's cruelty does not decide her future. Most importantly, I would tell her that happiness is possible. Years later, I stood in front of my beautiful home and smiled. The gate was still there. The walls were still there. But they no longer felt like protection from the world. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. I had learned the most important lesson of all. The greatest victory is not hurting the people who hurt you. The greatest victory is building a happy life without becoming like them. And as the sun disappeared below the horizon, I finally felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes when you stop looking backward and start looking forward. And for the first time in many years, I truly felt at home. The people who once respected my parents now wanted nothing to do with them. They stopped answering phone calls and ignored messages. Banks kept asking for meetings because my family owed a lot of money. Business partners left one after another. Even my brother's wife, who had once laughed at me and called me trash, packed her bags and walked away from him. Meanwhile, I sat quietly near the ocean. I held a warm cup of coffee in my hands and listened to the waves crash against the shore. The sound was calm and steady. It made me feel peaceful. My phone would not stop ringing. Every few minutes, another voicemail arrived. Some people cried. Some begged for help. Others apologized for how they had treated me in the past. I listened to none of them. I let the messages pile up. Around noon, my parents came to my gate again. This time they looked very different. The proud smiles they once wore were gone. My father, who used to walk into every room like he owned it, looked weak and tired. He leaned against the fence because he seemed too exhausted to stand straight. My mother was crying so hard that tears ran down her cheeks. "Evelyn," she said softly, "we don't have anywhere else to go. Please let us in." For a moment, my heart felt heavy. A small part of me wanted to help them. For many years, I had always been the one who tried to fix problems. I had always wanted my family to love me. But then I remembered everything. I remembered the hurt. I remembered the insults. I remembered the lonely nights when nobody cared how I felt. I remembered all the times they chose my brother instead of me. Slowly, I shook my head. "You made your choice a long time ago," I said. "You chose him over me. All of you did." My brother immediately became angry. He slammed his fists against the gate. "You think you've won," he shouted. "You'll regret this someday." But his words no longer scared me. The truth was simple. He had already lost everything. His businesses had failed. His wife had left. The money was gone. The power he once enjoyed had disappeared. I walked closer to the gate. For a few seconds nobody spoke. Then I looked at them and said quietly, "For 9 years you treated me like I didn't matter. You acted as if I was a burden. Now look at what happened." My mother suddenly dropped to her knees. "Please, Evelyn," she cried. "Just give us one chance." The ocean waves crashed loudly behind me. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I answered, "One chance is all I ever asked for." After saying those words, I turned around and walked away. The gate locked behind me with a sharp click. That sound felt like the ending of a chapter in my life. Sometimes revenge is not loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is simply walking away. 3 days later, I attended a charity event in another part of town. The evening was pleasant until my phone suddenly sent me an alert. Motion detected. Someone had entered my property. I did not panic. In fact, I had been expecting something like this. I opened my security camera app and checked the live video. There they were. My brother was carrying large bags through the gate. My parents followed behind him. They were moving into my house without permission. They acted as if it still belonged to them. I watched the video calmly. Then I closed the app. I did not rush home. I did not call anyone right away. Instead, I let them continue. I let them unpack their bags. I let them believe they had won. The next morning, I arrived at my house with several police officers. My brother came into the hallway wearing one of my expensive silk robes. He looked shocked when he saw us. "What are they doing here?" he shouted. One officer stepped forward. "You are trespassing, sir," he said firmly. My parents walked out of the kitchen carrying cups of coffee they had made using my coffee machine. The moment they saw the officers, all the color disappeared from their faces. "Evelyn, wait," my mother said. But I did not stop. I handed the officers papers proving that I legally owned the house. I also showed them the security footage of the break-in. In addition, I had restraining orders that I had filed weeks earlier. Everything was documented. Everything was legal. Everything was clear. I looked directly at my family. "This is not your home," I said. It never was. My mother's coffee cup slipped from her hands. It smashed against the floor. The sound echoed through the room. My father lowered his head. He looked defeated. Then my brother lost his temper. With anger burning in his eyes, he rushed toward me. Before he could get close, one of the officers stepped in front of him. "Step back, sir." My brother froze. He was breathing heavily. His face was red with anger. But he stopped. For the first time in his life, he had no control. The officers escorted all 3 of them outside. Their bags were placed on the driveway. Several neighbors watched from their windows. Some recorded videos with their phones. Everyone could see what was happening. Everyone could see the truth. The family that once called me worthless had been removed from my home. When the gates finally closed again, silence returned. I walked back inside. The house felt peaceful. I poured myself a drink and sat near the large windows facing the ocean. I did not dance. I did not cheer. I did not celebrate. Instead, I simply enjoyed the quiet. For years, I had dreamed about having peace. Now I finally had it. The story spread quickly. By the end of the week, newspapers and websites were talking about my family. Many headlines focused on the dramatic eviction. Some people expected me to be painted as the villain. But that did not happen. The truth came out. Reporters learned about the unpaid debts. They learned about the failed businesses. They learned about the years of family problems. Soon my phone started ringing again. Reporters wanted interviews. Former business partners wanted conversations. Even old friends who once laughed at me wanted to hear my side of the story. This time I spoke. I stayed calm. I stayed honest. I simply told the truth. Within days, my brother's remaining business deals disappeared. Investors walked away. Accounts were frozen. Opportunities vanished. The empire he once bragged about became nothing more than a memory. My parents tried reaching out to old friends. But many doors remained closed. People who once welcomed them warmly suddenly had excuses. People remembered how they had treated me. People remembered the choices they had made. At social events and dinner parties, whispers followed them everywhere. Everyone knew the story. Everyone knew how they had treated their daughter. Then one evening there was another knock at my door. When I opened it, I saw them standing there once again. My parents. My brother. But this time was different. There were no bags. No demands. No arrogance. Only sadness. My brother looked exhausted. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Please, Evelyn. I can't keep sleeping in my car. Just help me get back on my feet. Give me a loan. I'll pay you back." My father stepped forward. For the first time in my life, his voice cracked. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "Wrong about everything." My mother cried beside him. She could barely speak through her tears. For a moment, I saw the little girl I used to be. The girl who wanted her family to love her. The girl who dreamed about hearing the words, "We're sorry." And now those words had finally arrived. But too much time had passed. Too much damage had been done. I was no longer that little girl. I am stronger now. I stood tall and looked at them. "You spent years showing me exactly where I stood in this family," I said. "Now the whole world knows where you stand." The hope disappeared from their faces. Slowly they understood. There would be no second chance. There would be no rescue. I gently closed the door. This time it felt final. Not because of a lock. Not because of a gate. But because I had finally let go. After that day, I did not celebrate. I simply lived my life. Every morning, sunlight filled my beautiful home. Every evening, the ocean waves rolled against the shore. For years, my family had called me useless. They had treated me like I did not matter. But they were wrong. I mattered. I always had. I worked hard. I built a successful life. I created something meaningful. The best part was not watching them lose everything. The best part was discovering peace inside myself. Soon I began using my success to help other people. I funded scholarships for students who needed support. I donated money to shelters. I helped people who felt forgotten, lonely, or powerless. I wanted others to have opportunities that I never had. That became my real victory. Because revenge is not about destroying someone else. It is about refusing to let their cruelty destroy you. Even now, when I stand on my balcony at night, I sometimes think about the past. The cool ocean breeze touches my face. The smell of salt fills the air. The stars shine above the water. And I remember that final moment. I remember my parents' sad eyes. I remember my brother's shaking voice. I remember the family who once called me worthless. Then I smile. Because I finally know the truth. I was never worthless. I was never the problem. I was never the stain they believed I was. I was strong. I was brave. And all along I was the fire.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं। ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है। अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं। ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है। दिल का हर साजो समा तो मेरी हर एक तमन्ना तू मेरी रूह का मका तू। लकीरों में नहीं लिखा जो तुमने ख्वाब देखा था। वफा की इस कहानी में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है पता तेरा कहाँ होगा, मगर खामोश है दुनिया कहाँ मेरा जहाँ होगा। बस एक बार मुड़ के देख ले मेरी बेबसी की सूरत। मुझे है आज भी तेरी वफा की सख्त जरूरत। साए मेरे तन्हा रह गया दर्द का असर। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, दर्द का असर।